Hi friends, so it's April, which is National Poetry Month, and you may know that there was a long while where poetry and I didn't exactly get along. But what you may not know is that all through elementary school, every single month, I was required to memorize a poem. The whole class would learn the same poem and you'd do some lessons around it, and then at some point in the month, everyone in class had to get up in front of everybody else and recite it from memory. We'd all learn the same poem and you'd do some lessons around it, and then at some point in the month, everyone in the class had to get up in front of everybody else and recite it from memory. I remember exactly 2 poems that I learned in all 6 years. Robert Frost's Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening, which I learned in kindergarten, and The Frog. So in 5th grade, I was in Mrs. Spengler's class, in the last classroom at the end of the hallway on the left. It had greenish fluorescent lighting and a tile floor with a navy blue carpet and a dusty chalkboard that was the centerpiece of the classroom where we diagrammed sentences in grammar class, Miss Spengler's signature subject. And to its left was the one bright spot in the room, the bulletin board that was always decorated with the poem we were supposed to memorize that month. In April, it was The Frog by HILAIRE BELLOC, which I hope I'm pronouncing correctly. We read it together and then separately and then each individually, reciting it in front of the teacher before the end of the month, who in this case was notoriously grouchy. Everybody feared her and you absolutely did not want to end up in her homeroom class. But then of course, I slipped under her radar by being good at spelling and grammar, but if you weren't, or if you were one of the kids who left memorizing the poem until the last day of the month and didn't come prepared to recite it, boy, the look she gave you would reach like through your soul back into the past where you were playing Mario Kart with your brother instead of practicing your recitation and just smack that N64 controller right out of your hand. She was a real nails for breakfast, tacks for snacks kind of teacher. But that April, during Friday art class, we came back to our desks from recess to piles of green construction paper sitting on our desks. She showed us how to cut them into rectangles and carefully fold them with precise edges in an exact order into a little origami frog. It is, I think to my knowledge, one of the only origami shapes that starts with a rectangle, and it's also the only one that I remember how to make. And I took an origami class at the library. When you finish an origami frog and press on its back with your finger, it springs back on its folds, jumping, like a frog. We had fun popping them and watching them sproing around the room in a rare moment where goofing off in Mrs. Spengler's class was permitted. Chaos derived from perfectly straight lines. In the end, we each tacked our best frogs up on the bulletin board around the poem. Be kind and tender to the frog, and do not call him names, as Slimy Skin or Polly-wog or likewise Ugly James, or Gape-a-grin or Toad Gone Wrong or Billy Bandy-knees. The frog is justly sensitive to epithets like these. No animal will more repay a treatment kind and fair, at least so lonely people say, who keep a frog, and by the way, they are extremely rare. I still remember the poem 18 years later, and not just because there was a kid in my class named James who did not appreciate that Ugly James line, but because it's a silly poem about frogs, but also about lonely people and kindness and empathy and being gentle with creatures rhymes with teachers who have a bit of a bad rep. I still make origami frogs whenever I have a rectangle of paper, like a gum wrapper or those little paper napkin rings that they sometimes wrap around your silverware at an Olive Garden. And every time I make one, it reminds me to be tender and kind. Tell me about a poem that you like in the comments. If you like this video, please share it with someone who you think might like it. You can also support me by pledging on Patreon or clicking that notification bell. I'll see you soon. Bye.